Thank you all so much for coming out to our community meeting. Welcome. We appreciate the time that you're giving us this evening to explain a little bit about what this thing is with the Great Lakes Fire in Craven County. My name is Carrie McCullen. I am one of the public information officers for the event for the Great Lakes Fire, and we'll be hearing tonight from many of our incident management team members. I will be introducing them. We will learn a little bit about what has been going on with the fire, as well as get some ideas on the current status and be able to also have question and answer time at the end. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and plan on hearing from our first speakers tonight. So we will hear from our agency administrators for the Unified Command Incident Management Team that we have working the Great Lakes Fire.
Well, good evening. I'm Tommy Sports, Agency Administrator for the North Carolina Forest Service. On the Great Lakes Fire, which started about a week ago, the fire exceeded the initial attack capabilities, and we quickly ramped up to a Type 1 incident. The purpose of Agency Administrator is to provide the direction for the team and give them guidance as to what we expect as agency administrators, and then lastly give them the authority to carry that forward. So I greatly appreciate y'all coming out here tonight, as we will share with you some information as to where we started last week to where we are presently.
My name's Nick Larson, and I'm the agency administrator, just like Tommy, for the Croatan National Forest. So I'm here on behalf of the Croatan. I want to really thank all the community for the support that we've had in this fire. We are in a drastically different place this Thursday than we were last Thursday. So we are incredibly happy to have the rain, and really, really happy to not have the same fire behavior that we were seeing or the impacts to the communities that we've had here. So the couple of just gracious things that I want to share with folks is not only the huge amount of community support that we've had, but the really good coordination and collaboration that we've had with your local governments and emergency management to help keep y'all very well informed on what's going on in the fire and just be well prepared for the emergency that we were managing here.
Thank y'all very much. We appreciate that. One detail that I forgot to mention earlier, since we are quite a large group in here, if you could just do a quick phone check, any gadgets and devices that you may have, make sure that we're on silent or vibrate tonight, please. That'll help our meeting run a little bit more smoothly. Thank you. Okay, so next up, we're actually going to hear from our incident meteorologist, very important position on the fire, and Scott Kennedy will tell you a little bit more about that.
Hi, my name is Scott Kennedy, and I'm an incident meteorologist on the fire, as Carrie said. My job on the fire is to predict the weather for fire behavior analysts, which you will hear from next, and also my main concern is firefighter safety on the line. So I'm here specifically for the team. I work for the National Weather Service. My home office is in Newport, so this is my home as well as yours. So it's kind of nice to be close. I go out west quite a bit. I have a few slides here. I kind of wanted to set you up with like a look at the past, and then a little bit of our short-term forecast, and then real quickly looking at what the outlook is like for precipitation-wise. How many people are glad that we didn't have a busy hurricane season last year? What that does not bring, or what it should bring that we didn't get quite as much, is precipitation. So it's kind of a give and take with that. No hurricanes, but now we're in a deficit of precipitation. You can see the normal line is kind of the brown line there in the middle. The green line is our accumulation, and that's since October 1st. I probably should have gone a little bit further back than that, but that's about, we've been below normal that entire time, And even if you look back to August 1st, it's the deficit here is about 5 inches. It's about 9 if we look back a little bit further than that. So we really missed out on the tropical moisture with that. After Florence, I'm sure a lot of us are very happy to not have any tropical systems for a while. But we can go ahead with the next slide. So here's a look. We've got 2 wet systems coming in, one tonight and tomorrow morning. That's going to bring us 1 to 1.5 inches of rain. So we're going to get some really beneficial rains from that. And then on Sunday, we have another system. It could be quite strong and bring some severe weather too, a little bit stronger than this one. So the storm total for both of those systems, we're looking in this area about 2 to 3 inches of rain. So that'll be very helpful for the fire. And in looking out into the future, there's a 3-month outlook. Next slide, please. There we go. So the Climate Prediction Center runs models, some long-range models, and kind of gives us an outlook on whether we think it's going to be above normal or below normal weather pattern. So it does look like there are better chances of us to be an above normal precipitation. So let's hope we kind of recharge the water table and help alleviate the fire concerns. So that's all I have. I just kind of wanted to share with you that we're a bit dry. So thank you very much.
Okay, Scott, thank you so much for that information. Very helpful. Next, we will hear from another position on the wildfire for the incident management team. That's going to be our fire behavior analyst. This person works very closely with the incident meteorologist, and we'll leave it up to Mike Hausch to tell you why.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Mike Hausch, fire behavior analyst. So what does a fire behavior analyst do? Basically, I practice the dark arts. I use chicken bones and tea leaves and weather information that I get from the incident meteorologist, trying to keep the feedback from squealing. So I take that information plus, what I see on the ground from a fuels perspective and try to predict, how intense the fire is going to burn and where is it going to go to. Okay, so let's talk about the fire, the Great Lakes fire. And if you'll indulge me, we'll take a little step back in time. When the fire started on 4/19, we had 2 indices that we kind of look at from a fire behavior standpoint, looking at severity. So you got one we call energy release component, or ERC, and then we have burning index. So ERC, layman's terms, kind of the amount of energy at the flaming front, measured in BTUs per square foot, right? How hot that thing's burning, okay? And then BI is basically how difficult it is to control, roughly correlated to the flame lengths times 10, okay? So on 4/19, I gotta pull my notes out because I'm old and I slept since then. So on 4/19, the ERC was 49 and the BI was 60. So what does that really mean, okay? We also look at the percentiles, the 90th and 97th percentile. So the 90th percentile means that only 10 of those days within that data set, typically 20 years, have been higher than that. In the 97th, only 3%. So the 90th percentile on the ERC is 53, so we were really pumping, reaching that 90th percentile, okay? The 97th was 62, so quite a bit down from that. The BI was 60, 90th was 101, and the 97th was 127. So it was really high on the ERCs, again, approaching that 97th percentile. So due to the phenomenal efforts of North Carolina Forest Service, Croatan, local fire departments, they were able to catch that fire under extremely difficult conditions. So I think y'all should give a hats off to those folks. So where we are today, because they made it easy for us. Where we are today, ERC is 8 and burning index is 20, right? Because of the rain we've got. We've got more in the forecast, okay? So the biggest concerns, especially in these organic fires in the organics, is burning down, okay? and we need much more moisture. Again, that's kind of what Scott was alluding to, is we didn't get that tropical storm moisture to kind of fill up the bathtub, right? Kind of soak that sponge. And so, is the fire out? The fire's not out, okay? Is it in a good position? Obviously, I threw out some numbers. It's in a really good position. With some drying trends, could it dry back out and smoke? Certainly, okay? So, but I know I can honestly say that the North Carolina Forest Service, Croatan, and all the local fire departments are on top of it. So with that, thank you very much, and have a good night.
Okay, thank you so much, Mike. Yes, we have had some really good little showers of rain here in the past few days, so hopefully that will continue through the weekend. Just as a heads up, we will have a question and answer session towards the end of our meeting today. So if you do have any burning questions, feel free to hold on to those. I know, I'd have to do it. Hold on to those questions if you will, write them down if you need to. We will have an opportunity to ask questions. Okay, last but not least, from our weather specialist and our scientist from the incident command team, is going to be our air quality resource advisor. Some of the bigger questions that we've gotten in the public information camp is regarding smoke impacts on the community. So we definitely wanted to bring our air quality resource advisor on board, and he will introduce himself.
Thanks. Hello, everybody. I'm John Pendergrast. I'm a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. I'm detailed here to this fire as part of the Wildland Fire Air Quality and Response Program. We provide these people on incidents to help with the community and also with the fire team plan around the air quality hazards that can exist, of course, with wildland fire. So as you all know, about 5 or 6 days ago, this fire was really churning. It was putting quite a lot of smoke up into the airshed, up into the atmosphere, and that was getting ushered up into this community as well, up into the New Bern area. And just looking at some of the air quality that was happening that day, it was in the hazardous category, according to the EPA threshold scale. Fortunately, the weather has cooperated for us. And so what we do as part of the smoke forecasting is any combustion puts up into the atmosphere fine particulates, and they are very small and very unhealthy for our lungs. Just to give you a quick example of how small these matters are, is about 2.5 microns, which is 1/20th the width of a human hair, just for scale and reference. And through the combustive process, those very fine particulates can get ushered well into our airways and into our lungs and cause health issues for especially people with asthma, children, the elderly, those kind of people. So we actually forecast for the PM 2.5, that fine particulate, with a daily forecast that we issue. Fortunately, looking ahead, we're not going to expect any hazardous conditions or anything that's even unhealthy for the population up in this area here associated with the fire and the forecast. So just wanted to let you know a little bit about that. Anytime you smell smoke in the air, you're also breathing in some amount of particulates into your lungs. Just keep that in mind. So even in your house or around your fireplace, if a little bit of a smoke seeps out into your living room, you actually have the potential of inhaling some of that fine particulate in your lungs at a certain level. So just keep that in mind. Thank you. And I'll be around for questions.
Excellent, John. Thank you so much. Okay, next we're going to go into the operations side of this fire. It takes a literal army of folks to be able to work on an incident like this, especially one with the acreage amounts that we have here on the Great Lakes Fire. So to tell us a little bit more about the operational side of the fire, we're going to hear from Sean Nagel.
Good evening, folks. My name is Sean Nagel. I serve as one of the operations section chiefs for the Southern Area Interagency Incident Management Red Team. So what does an operations section chief do? Ultimately, right now we are working with the Croatan National Forest and North Carolina Forest Service. They give us our goals and objectives for this fire. What I do and my comrades as operations section chiefs, we take in what those expectations are, develop tactics, implement those tactics in the field, order resources, monitor our progress, and every day it's an evaluation. Are our tactics working? Do we have to change? So ultimately, operations section folks, We get told what to do, and we do it in the field and try to do a good job at it. So what we've been doing, obviously, this is the Great Lakes Fire. Great Lakes Fire is currently 32,400 acres. It's 30% contained, and there's 206 personnel assigned. Again, great efforts on August 19th and 20th and 21st, April 19th, 20th, and 21st from the Croatan National Forest and North Carolina Forest Service and the local fire departments. Fantastic job. Y'all did a great job. So the fire itself started in the south right here, and this was very much a very high wind-driven fire. Most of the acres occurred in the first 1 to 2 burn periods, and it got up to that 32,400 acres. The footprint of this fire has pretty much largely stayed the same over the last 4 or 5 operational periods. So again, the large amount of this fire burned in those first 1 to 2 burn periods, and the folks here, the locals here, did a really good job with that. On April 21st, an order was placed for a Type 1 incident management team, and that's where we're here. The red team's here. So the fire's not out. We all know that. It's burning down deep below. It's burning vertically down. There's no real lateral movement that we're seeing. However, there's still heat in there. And that's what we're trying to do. When we talk about contingency line, we're not thinking tomorrow. We're not thinking 2 days from now. We're thinking 1 week, 1 month, when this does dry out. And potentially there aren't as many resources as there are right now. At least we got ahead of the curve. We have some time now. We're putting in those lines. If something happens down the road, we're in that much better position to take an active defense on this. So just moving around, obviously with all the residential areas up there, that's a keen spot that we've been very much aware of, and I know a lot of the fine folks here reside in those areas. The northern progression of the fire, we've been very successful at holding. Absolutely successful at holding. Again, it has not moved since those first 1 to 2 operational periods. We have assets and fire apparatus and aviation assets watching that northern progression every day as long as we can. We have a lot of cool technological tools. We have infrared, which essentially is kind of put on an airplane or a UAS or a drone, flies over and tells us where the hot spots are. So really great technology, really great presence up there. Obviously, we are keenly aware of all those residential areas and y'all's real need to know what's going on up there. So just moving around, obviously we all know that this is the Croatan National Forest, and there's a lot of private timberlands. The Weyerhaeuser Corporation is all around there. So we've been working very closely with the Weyerhaeuser Corporation and all the private timberlands, all the private inholders, to make sure they're aware of what we're doing and we understand what they need from us. Our intent from day one is always to keep this fire within the Croatan National Forest boundaries. That's when I talked about the contingency line. A lot of these contingency lines that you see are right on the edge of the Croatan National Forest and Weyerhaeuser and another private timberland. So our intent is if, again, just to let y'all know, in a month, if it dries out and this does kick back again, we have those contingency lines in there, but our intent is always to keep this fire on the Croatan National Forest and protect those private timberlands and protect all those residences. So just moving around, there's a lot of stuff on this map. I know it's confusing, but I'll try to decipher as best as I can. So again, these are those contingency lines that I was talking about. There's a lot of natural features that we're using. Obviously, Croatan National Forest is a sensitive ecosystem, is a Pocosin ecosystem. So we certainly want to be mindful of that. We have tractor plows, we have dozers, but we definitely don't want to ruin any of those historic artifacts, those culturally sensitive areas, those natural resource sensitive areas. So we have a contingent of resource advisors, and those resource advisors, they're scientists, they're subject matter experts. Before we put down plows or dozers or trample on stuff, they go ahead and survey that area, and they determine it to be okay to actually kind of dig into the dirt, or they give us alternatives if we have to go around areas. So this is a special place. I don't have to tell you all that, but we want to keep it that way when we leave. So just moving around, again, the Croatan National Forest has a timber sale that they just completed over there that obviously we want to protect our natural resources at all time, and that's all part of that. And then here's the south. One of the things as far as in the south that we're currently doing in the last 2 days is there's a series of dam control impoundments right here. So we're utilizing that existing water to flood the bathtub, as Mike, our fire behavior analyst, said. So again, we're in Poquoson, right? Really deep organic soil, really deep, almost 15 feet deep in areas. So that, we've talked about this lateral fire normally on suppression fires, but this fire is burning down deep. So in order to put that out, it's very difficult for us as firefighters to dig and get it in there. We literally have to fill up the bathtub. We talked with the IMET mentioned we got a good shot of rain coming up here. So part of that emphasis with utilizing that existing dam control areas is to make sure that rainwater that hopefully will come, it doesn't run off. We want to keep that. We want to fill up the tub. So again, we're working closely with the Croatan National Forest and all those resource advisors to make sure any of those tactics that we're utilizing don't cause any further damage to our sensitive natural resources. Other than that, it's been really great. Really appreciate y'all coming out and talking with our folks out in the field. It's been welcoming for sure. And yeah, we're in this together for sure. So I'll be around if y'all have any questions later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Sean. It's a lot of information to digest, so you can imagine how challenging it is for the operations section to go through all of that data, 12 to 16 hours a day, trying to figure out what's going on, what's the plan next, how it's going to change in 3 days based on all the other parameters. Last but not least, we'll hear from our incident commander, actually one of our incident commanders. We have a host of them on our incident management team. And to talk with us a little bit about what's going on with the fire is going to be our incident commander, Mr. Shane Hardy.
Hey, good evening, everyone. As Carrie said, there are several incident commanders on this team. And so we'll start out. You see I'm wearing a North Carolina Forest Service shirt, right? And so we have unified command here because we have different values at risk on this incident. That's why some of the incident commanders here are from the U.S. Forest Service or U.S. Park Service, federal agencies. We also have state agencies. That way we can ensure that we're in alignment as a group in where we're headed in trying to protect those different values at risk because those priorities may be different. So what do incident commanders do? Can you hear me in the back? All right. So what do incident commanders do? We manage. We're managers. Simple as that. We have this big machine of people that all are specialists. You've only sampled a small percentage of the specialized people that we have on this team, in addition to the firefighters that are on the ground that are actually doing the work, right? Because those are the guys putting the fire out. But there are a lot of specialists supporting them, making sure that we're headed in the right direction, that we're protecting the right resources as we do that we are seeing all of the values at risk. And what I mean by that is your homes, your infrastructure, your railroads, your power, your water. All of those things we have to take into consideration in all of our actions. And so we manage that group of people, the information officers that lined up this meeting tonight, a large staff of those that give information to the media and talk to those folks to keep them informed so that they can keep you informed. So it is a very large machine, and we as that group, we ensure that every part of that team is moving in the right direction along the way within the guidance and delegation of the agency administrators that you heard from in the beginning, because they're the ones that asked for us to come and then told us what they expected and then gave us the authority to fulfill that expectation. So I'll talk a little bit. Sean did an excellent job of outlining the fire. But you really want to know how it's going to impact you, right? I mean, that's why you're here. So here's where we are in reality. That ground fire that they talked about, and most of you, if you've lived around here, you're familiar somewhat with those organic soils. Some of you may not be. But those organic soils, when they get dry, they'll just continue to burn down. Now, they may not be dry down to 15 feet. They may only be dry down to a foot or 2 feet. The problem is, folks, we're just early in that season, and so those organics tend to dry as we enter that summertime period, and they just get drier and drier as temperatures get hotter. Because we have fire on the landscape right now, there's a chance that those organics just continue to dry as we get into May and June, July with those higher temperatures, and that makes those organics more available. So we're trying to work with this team and the operations section, those folks on the ground, to ensure that if that heat stays there and Mother Nature does not put it out, and we can't put it out with our plans, and some heat remains, that 2 months from now, 3 months from now, if that heat's still there and all of a sudden this fire starts to move, that we have taken the appropriate actions to have a defensible line to go and try to stop this fire before it's in your backyard. That's really what this boils down to. And we have an excellent plan, in my opinion. Many people on this team have a tremendous amount of experience in this type of fuel. Although we have people from all over this country, and we all fight fire from coast to coast. Just because this uniform says North Carolina, that's not the only place we fight fire, I assure you. And so we bring all that knowledge and skill set together to put this plan together to protect you and your infrastructure. Will this fire ever move again? I have no idea. I really don't. We don't know what type of rainfall we're going to get. Is it going to be a wet summer? Is it going to be a dry summer? You heard from our IMET, they're forecasting above average rainfall. But will that be enough to eventually fill up that sponge and put that ground fire out? I can't answer that, honestly, tonight. I hope it does. Hope's not a strategy. And so we make sure that if it does not, that we have you and your assets protected. There is the possibility, and I'll tell you now, that at times, if they see that some of that heat is starting to show itself a little bit too much as we get into next week or weeks beyond, there may be a need to burn out some small areas to make sure that we bring some of that stuff before it can run to our lines, that we set the fire under our terms, and I say ours, and I'm saying all future firefighters assigned to this incident, that we burn those small areas to bring that fire to those fire lines under our terms instead of waiting for it to come to those lines under its terms. And that'll be very strategically planned out if that ever occurs. So there may be times you see a little bit of smoke in the future, and it could be a week from now, it could be 4 weeks from now. Right now, there is no plans to burn anything. Let me be very clear about that. We couldn't burn it right now if we wanted to because it rained last night. And it's going to rain again tonight. I'm pretty confident in that, right? But we're taking those measures now as a team to ensure that if that is needed, that it can be accomplished safely and effectively, and we'll have the right resources. Now, this team that is here is a Type 1 national team. They go all over the country and manage some of the most complex disasters that this country has to see. The fire is getting into a phase now, through the hard work of those boots on the ground, that we don't need this many people going into next week is what we're futuring. And so we will be transitioning this team to another team, very effective and efficient, but smaller in size, smaller footprint, less vehicles on your roads at 8 o'clock in the morning. I know you'll be grateful for that. So, but they're very good at what they do, and we feel like we'll be set up in a good position to hand that off to them, let them continue to drive forward and finish any remaining parts that we've started, while also using those assets of the drones, the UAS, the nighttime flights with the fixed wing to ensure that everything stays parked where it's supposed to, and if it doesn't, then they'll enact the plans that we've developed. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Shane. Appreciate that. All right, so we've made it to the half hour with a lot of information to digest, I'm sure. A lot of things to think about and consider, maybe things that you weren't even thinking about when you came through the door this evening. We're going to go ahead and open up the rest of our time, the next half hour, for questions. We are going live tonight on Facebook, and we received some questions from our online viewers as well. So since we're in an elementary school, we're going to try to play fair as best possible and take questions from the group here as well as our friends online so that everybody gets a chance. First off, since you all made it out tonight, you're going to go ahead and get the leg up on the competition. Do we have any questions to start off with? Ooh, I got a hand right up in the back. Wonderful. Sir, if you will stand, and I'll repeat your question from there, okay? So go ahead.
Do you have any idea what caused the fire?
Okay, very good question, and I'm sure that is on a lot of people's minds. We had a media release last night that mentioned that it was human-caused but remains under investigation. So we'll go ahead and bring Shane back up to explain a little bit more on that topic.
Okay, folks, I know everybody wants to know that, right? I mean, that's what it boils down to. The reality is, it's always a legal investigation with these fires. And like any other legal investigation, sorry about that. Can you hear me now? Appreciate that. So it's a legal investigation. Anytime we're looking into the cause of one of these fires, we have to make sure that investigative process is done correctly and it's not compromised. And because of that, we're very tight on what information that we will release to the public until we're comfortable that we have all of the investigative data that we need. So it's going to be a while. I'm just going to be honest with you. It'll be a while before we release anything official on that other than the release that went out last night.
Next question from the group. Yes, ma'am.
You had mentioned that, in the future we might smell some smoke, whether doing controlled burns or possibly if this thing kicks back up again. Is there any, like a text message system that we can set up on our phones or a website that we can go to if we have concerns, and if we smell smoke, we're like, ooh, this is something to be concerned about, where we can go for information, other than like just, looking for the news people who may not have the information yet.
Okay, so to relay the question one more time, there is potential for smoke in the future regarding this wildfire, but also any prescribed burning that may be in the area, which is very common as one of our treatments that we do on the forest. Is there any way that we can set up a text messaging or alert system for that? And I'll give you a little tidbit from the North Carolina Forest Service side. And I honestly didn't have him on my roster tonight for speaking, but I may lend that to our emergency services representative tonight, Mr. Ira Whitford, who's in attendance as well. So to start off with, our North Carolina Forest Service has actually started a new subscription service in which you can go online to our website, ncforestservice.gov, and you can sign up for any number of topics, whether it's wildfire awareness, smoke conditions, how to put trees on your land, any type of cost share or educational opportunities, prescribed burner programs, certified burner, things like that. ncforestservice.gov is a subscription service there. It'll pop up right when you go to the website, and you can either receive that information by text or by email. So you have some options there. You go through the process, click the buttons, and then go on from there. Mr. Ira, would you mind answering some questions about maybe a local alert system you may have set up for Craven County? I appreciate it, sir.
Yeah, we have a code red. I'm Ira Whitford, Assistant Director of Craven County Emergency Services. In the county, we have a message system called Code Red. If you're not logged in or registered for it, you can go to Craven County government homepage, and there's a link there, a place for you to register. And if we use that, if we determine that it is a real emergency, we try not to use redundancy because there's so much media that puts those type of alerts out. We try to use it for when it's definitely a real threat to you. But if you'll go to that site, we can, and if we feel the need to put it out there, we will put it out there and notify you. And we have another couple of systems called iPods, and that different type of emergencies triggers different type of alert systems. Any questions on that? Yes, sir.
I think I signed up for that, but I did not receive anything.
Yeah, we didn't put nothing out. We weren't alerted to where we felt like there was a threat, that immediate threat to personnel at that time. We had everything in place ready to go if we needed to make that alert. But like I said, we just use it for when we really feel like the threat is there. We rely on our media partners and PIOs to put that information out, and that's how we carry that out. Anything else? Thank you.
I do have one more question, if you don't mind, and then we'll go to the young lady over there by the windows. It was one that came in from our online viewers regarding evacuations, and the message was, what is the protocol for notifying residents if evacuations need to occur? And that's important for any kind of natural disaster that may happen.
Yes, well, we meet different thresholds of what evacuations are needed. In this scenario, we were depending upon the U.S. Forestry and North Carolina Forest Service to say, hey, this is the time to start moving people. And that's when we would have made the alerts. We had preparations in place if that need were to arise. But it depends on each emergency, and each emergency is very different of when you have those thresholds. A lot of us here are used to hurricanes. Those type of emergencies are planned. You've got a little better scenario of what's happened. This fire situation is immediate. So we have to plan and work as we go. But we wanted to, when we make that call, we wanted to make sure that it's very accurate and your safety is the most important to us.
All right, if I can go with you. Thank you.
How far in advance are notifications sent out, and realizing that they vary by situation, but how much time are citizens given to know that we can evacuate?
All right, so to repeat that, it's a timing matter. How far out would a notification likely occur, and how much time would we be given to evacuate if need be?
Okay, I'm going to refer that one to Director Stanley Kite. He's the Director of Emergency Services of Craven County, and he'll be able to fill you in more on those details.
Thank you, Howard. That's a very good question. First of all, I'd like to say thank you, but let me just give you a quick synopsis. There's a management team which includes local politicians, elected officials, as well as city managers, county managers, that we're constantly coordinating with. On this particular scenario, and again, it could be an event that happens right now with no warning, and if so, by ordinance, I can declare that evacuation order, and we can move emergency personnel in and start moving people out. But then we're in a dilemma trying to get a shelter open. Shelter operations are not easy. Shelter operations are not constantly open and available 24/7. So let me just reflect on this event, since that's why you're here tonight, is that we were working within the partnership of the U.S. and NC Forestry on the ground operations live. We were both on scene the whole time for a 2-hour window. Now, I know you're going to say, well, 2 hours don't give me a whole lot of time. I'm sorry, I'm going to sound very cold when I say this. When it comes to that, it's not about convenience. It's about life safety and property safety. If you saw, some of you who live further down Bryson Creek Road saw we pre-positioned some emergency vehicles. That, again, was trying to have a contingency of people in place. So when we activated the IPAL system, the Code Red system, law enforcement, fire personnel in communities door to door, if all else fails, we're going to go door to door if that's what we have to do. But when you create that kind of mass exodus, you got to have information on where to tell people to go and what to do. So one mechanism automatically triggers multiple other mechanisms. I'm not trying to put the county manager on the spot, but I know for a fact he has a state of emergency in his pocket, ready to activate at our request. He had shelter teams in place that could not have their weekend off because we knew the reality we may have to open that shelter. And I'm going to say this real quick. We have a lot of rules and regulations on shelters, and when you talk about pet-friendly shelters, we only have one that's approved and authorized. So we had it identified, we had it ready, we had already worked plans through the school system, the management team, the elected officials. There was a lot of players in the background, and I apologize, we can't go door to door at every moment, but I don't want to create panic. So you have to have that balancing act. Don't create panic, but yet be prepared. But the trigger mechanism for this event was a 2-hour notice. Some events we have 24-hour notice, some events we have 36-hour notice. But again, the events themselves dictate what that trigger mechanism is. Okay? Just that for me.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Yes, one more, and then we'll go to our online. Mm-hmm. Definitely, yes. We received reports that early on in the wildfire that people were seeing lots of smoke and ash almost raining down from some of the conditions. We'll go ahead and bring up our air quality specialist again. The alert system that our emergency services folks talked about is one of your first routes for any major alert, and then there may be some other things in place from the air quality side.
So that's a two-part question. Before the presence of an air resource advisor on a fire, local counties and through the National Weather Service as a vehicle can issue an air quality alert. And air quality alerts were in place for several days, I know, in the last week. That was issued to the county health department and then relayed through the National Weather Service and local media. Those are called, again, air quality alerts. Now, on the fire itself, part of my capacity is forecasting for the incident area, the immediate incident area around the fire and the communities affected, and the response personnel that are affected by the fire as well. So we do local alerting on our fire when that smoke level does reach a capacity where it becomes hazardous or unhealthy for population as well as firefighters. Thanks.
Okay, very good questions. We'll go ahead and pull some from our online viewers. There seems to be a common trend asking about containment. So the first question to open us up is, what does containment really mean? And what measures does it entail? Another one is in our media updates, our releases that we've had, news updates, we've been sitting at 30% for a few days now. And why is that when we've had such a great team here to be able to work on this fire, to put it out? And then the big question, when are we going to hit that golden 100% containment? Oh, wouldn't that be wonderful? So, Incident Commander, if you want to go ahead and take that one, or all three.
It's a loaded question, just to be straight with you. All right, so when you look up and you see the map, you see the black, those black edges, that's where we've got containment at. And so what we mean by that is that we feel confident that fire will never move again. Now, we're not 100%, but we're confident. We'll say to an 85% confidence level that based on infrared technology, based on boots on the ground, based on what the fire has done and the measures that we have taken to stop that fire there, we're at a point that we feel confident that with no additional action taken, that fire will never move. And so that's how we use containment. The reason that 30% has kind of hung up right there, and I know it's frustrating for me, because as a team, we like to see that containment go up while we're here, because nationally, other firefighters all across the country look at that and they're like, oh, they're still at 30% and they've been there for a week. So in reality, we simply can't say that the rest of this fire where we don't have containment will never move again. So we will, through the use of UAS technology with infrared cameras and those fixed wing flights, as we can determine that fire is completely cold in certain areas, you'll see us add containment eventually. Part of the reason we can't increase that is because most of our actions are not right up against the fire. And the reason they're not right up against the fire is because of this resource in here. This Picosin, it's very challenging. Heavy equipment doesn't stand up well in it anyway. And secondly, it's one of the most pristine places left in eastern North Carolina. And we don't want to go in and take that and take dozers right through the middle of that and destroy it, because those lines will be there. That scar on the landscape, as fast as things heal around here, there are still lines in some of these Picosins from 50 and 60 years ago. They just don't go away, and it changes that topography and that organic layer. It changes the vegetation. And so in this case, it's not a good thing to do to go in there. That's why we're building those lines further away. Does that make sense? Okay, while I'm up here, I don't know that we fully answered this young lady's question a while ago. And so she asked about, notification of burns and things like that, or smelling smoke, when we might see smoke. We can't control the fire itself as far as how much smoke it might output, during the course of a day, it's not going to be a whole lot, but there are some areas still smoking. Even today, after the rains last night, we flew it and there's still smoke coming out of it in places, depending on the wind direction. And you can look at that on your phones now. Everybody's got a weather app on their phone, right? You know, if the wind's blowing towards your house, you might smell smoke. If we are going to put fire on the ground, whether it's our team or a team in the future, there will be plenty of notification about that. We're not at the point of initial attack anymore. It'll be a planned event, and there'll be a notice going out through the Facebook pages, the media, these cameras set up behind you. Those folks, that message will get out to you. Okay? Thank you.
More questions to our folks here. Let's see, I got a couple hands. Yes, ma'am. Keeping us accurate on our facts. I like it.
In case you hadn't figured out yet, I try to be pretty honest in my answers. So that number is one that we kind of grab out of air. We literally look at where the fire's at, the actions that we plan to take, and we try to do our best job of projecting it. But on a fire like this, much different than a fire we would be on out west, say in California, you know, those fires don't burn in the ground, so to speak. And so we can do a pretty good job on fires out west of projecting when we're going to get around those fires. We've got a lot of technology now. With fires like this that burn into the ground, it's up to a lot of factors, one of those being the amount of precipitation that we'll get. And we can't, as much technology as we have, we all watch the weather, right? And it's right sometimes, and maybe it's not quite as right other times. So that's our best guess based on the long-range estimates we have of when we could expect. But I'll tell you, that date could be extended very far out in the summer before we can consider it fully contained.
Very good question. Let's see. We'll get this. I can't remember. All right, we'll go with you next. Yep. Yes, sir. Okay. All right, that's a very good question. I'll repeat that one, but we'll be happy to bring you on to our operations team, sir, so you can get that plan in place. We'd love to have it. Any volunteers are welcome. Go ahead and go through our fire training. We'll get it done. To that note, we will have our operations section chief trainee, Sean Nagel, answer that question. But the question was, with the fact that we have so many water resources around us, why not go ahead and bring in all the aircraft that we possibly can and get the water drops on the fire and go ahead and knock it out for the season? Sean?
Very good question. We talked about tactics, right? Why don't we just put this out? So, yes, sir, aviation assets work really well for surface fires, normal surface fires. But as we've been saying, this is a ground fire. So the fire is burning vertically down. So when, I'm from Mississippi, I've been out west. Yeah, aviation assets are great. Air tankers, whether they have retardant in it or water in it or a helicopter with a bucket. For fast spreading surface fires, they're awesome. But this is a ground fire. So unfortunately, we just have to utilize the rain and fill up the tub is the best thing to do. The other thing too is we have some great military installations around this area. This is a pretty good congested airspace too. Not saying we couldn't do that, but it would just add a complexity to it. But more so, the reason why we just don't line up 20 different tank tankers is this is a ground fire, not a surface fire. But tankers are definitely very successful in surface fires.
I just want to add a little bit to that comment too. And I'll tell you, in reality, in the first 2 days of this fire, we used every air resource that was humanly available to us. So we had a phenomenal amount of air power here trying to keep this fire as small as humanly possible. And part of the reason that we called on the red team to help us out is those tactics weren't working. they were not being successful. I live outside of Asheville, and when my wife asked me how the fire was doing, I said, well, it just jumped across a 60-foot wide road that has alligators living in the ditches. She was a little surprised. So we tried with every piece of aircraft that was available to us to try to keep this fire at the smallest place that we could.
Hey, I want to add one quick thing to that. So when you think about putting water on a fire, when you're talking about ground fire, you start talking in millions of gallons of water, not in hundreds of gallons of water. And so aircraft, no matter how many we had, we're still talking in hundreds or at the most thousands of gallons of water. And it takes millions of gallons to put out these organic soils.
These have all been really great questions. You, sir, I think you've been waiting for a while. Very good question. So the question is, do we have an estimate for the number of acres for ground fire within the perimeter? Sean?
So unfortunately, the way we measure wildland fires, we don't really go we just go in linear feet. So we do acres, so we really don't have the ability to really get a sense of how much is burning underground. Ultimately, along the edges, what we can say is along the edges, again, we talked about the IR flights. So there is some heat in some areas. Let me just grab my pointer real quick. So there is some heat that we're well monitoring in these areas right here, this right here, and this right there. So ultimately, they're about within like 100 feet off of our fire line. So we're managing that. To give a metric on how many acres, it's tough. But again, 32,400 acres altogether. That's just on the surface, and we're diligently monitoring all that ground fire with resources and technology.
Very good questions. Once we finish up with our question and answer session, which we do have a few short minutes left, we will have the opportunity for you folks that did come out tonight. We've got several of our maps scattered about the room. We'll have some of our resource professionals here to be able to sit with you at the map for just a brief moment and answer any follow-up questions if you have any specifics related to your community or to the map itself. I know up here it's a little bit challenging to see those fine-tuned lines, so we want to offer that opportunity for you, but we won't have terrible much time, so we'll try to streamline that as much as possible. Okay, next question from the crowd. Yes, sir.
I have a question. Do they ever use pumps, because we have such a great water supply, to flood certain areas which we think are really critical?
Good question. Okay, so did we ever use pumps to be able to flood certain areas? And keep in mind, our operations section chief did mention earlier that we are flooding the areas with different gates and hydrology outputs there. Shane, I think you'll go ahead and tell a little bit more about that. Thank you.
It's a great question. And so we do use volume lift pumps, pumps as large as 18 and 24 inches, quite often in coastal North Carolina to flood some of these areas. It depends on the topography. All right. And so it depends on the topography, the lay of the land, whether or not we have a ditch network where we can move that water down. Where we are trying to flood, we've already blocked off the culverts. We're looking at filling those ditches up by pulling some of the riser boards out from the lake and letting that lake drain and essentially stop where we block the culverts. And then we can start directing that water and let it soak into that organic. That's the highest area of organic smoke that we have currently on the fire. And so that will take a lot of the problem away. We are looking at, and we actually just talked right before I left the ICP about trying to increase that volume of water in there by bringing a few pumps in. It's not one of these large-scale pumping operations because there's not the ditch network set up like we would see north of here, say around Hyde County or Terrell County, where currently we do have a very large pumping operation that's been going on for several weeks and is still in place and will still be in place for several weeks to come, where we had as many as 60 volume lift pumps going. Here, at most, we may pull in at the most a half dozen pumps if necessary to move some water around in days to come.
Okay, one final question from the group, and then we'll finish up with a couple online. Yes, sir, way in the back there. Yes, very good. And that was actually an online question, so we'll double dip. How about that? The question was, there was a spot fire associated with this particular incident. It was about 8 acres, if I remember correctly. And to answer the current status and maybe some of the operational tactics that we utilize for that, we'll have our operations section chief back up to answer.
Hello again, folks. So thank you. Great question. So again, we started off this talk saying the bulk of this activity will happen within the first 1 to 2 operational periods, including that spot fire. So the spot fire that you're referencing is right about there. It was about roughly a mile off our northern progression of the line. This is our northern progression of the line. Through the aviation assets, we were able to detect that spot fire and get a liner out there quickly. Along with our efforts to keeping this northern progression at check, we've always been monitoring that spot fire. Obviously, that spot fire is out ahead of the northern progression, and we want to keep diligent mindfulness of that. So, yep, that spot fire has been taken care of, and it's all part of our response and patrol area.
Very good question. Thank you. I wish we had a little bit more time to chat about our questions, but our time is unfortunately up for our community meeting tonight. We're very grateful for Creekside Elementary to be able to offer this opportunity to chat with you for just a little bit. As you're lingering about, heading out to the car, feel free to stop one of us. We're here for the next at least half hour or so to be able to answer any final questions, or if you want to catch one of us near the map, we'll be happy to do so. For those of you that want to go back and listen to the recording tonight, we had some technical difficulties with our Facebook Live, but we did record it, so we are going to be able to post that at some point in the coming days. It might take us a little bit to get that bandwidth to post the hour-long meeting, but we'll make it happen. Any questions that we didn't answer, feel free to give us a call to our fire line or to the email. There's some pages floating around in the back that has our latest media update for today. Feel free to go ahead and capture that information. There's also some pages next to our maps with QR codes on them. Those are links to our fire update website called NCWeb. In fact, if you were curious about any wildfire in the United States of America, you'd be able to find any intel about that on that website. Also links to our Facebook page, as well as some great community information on a program called FireWise to help your community stay protected in the event that a wildfire does occur and start heading toward our communities. It's always great to be prepared and have a plan. That's what we do in our agencies, and for the incident management team that we're working for, we keep constant on our plans. We direct and reroute whenever we have a need to. So feel free to linger about. I also wanted to mention that we do have one of our district foresters for the North Carolina Forest Service with us. Dennis, if you'll just raise your hand, please, sir, over on our side by the windows over here. This gentleman works very hard to take care of the surrounding counties as well as Craven County and make sure that our homes and our livelihoods are safe from any wildfire activity, along with taking care of our lands and providing you with any information on forestry practices on your lands. So thank you again for joining us today. Feel free to come find us if you have any questions, and take care. Have a good night. Stay safe.